And that I love because of how often the system, of how often the mental operators, how often their conclusion is right, but the way that they got there is importantly wrong. Which means, and obviously if they're getting there the wrong way, then they don't have a general enough sort of understanding or true approach. Because then if you did the same thing with, 26 over 64, well, you'd get half, and that's no good. Okay, obviously. Another howler in calculating conjunctions had a cameo in the bizarre attempt by Donald Trump and his supporters to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election based on baseless claims of voter fraud. In a motion filed with the U.S. Supreme Court, the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton wrote, "The probability of former Vice President Biden winning the popular vote in the 4 defendant states, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, independently given President Trump's early lead in those states as of 3 a.m. on November 4th, 2020, is less than 1 in a quadrillion, or 1 in a quadrillion. For former Vice President Biden to win these 4 states collectively, the odds of that event happening decreased to less than 1 in a quadrillion to the 4th power." Paxton's jaw-dropping math assumed that the votes being tallied over the course of the counting were statistically independent, like repeated rolls of a die. But urbanites tend to vote differently from suburbanites, who in turn vote differently from country folk. And in-person voters differ from those who mail in their ballots, particularly in 2020 when Trump discouraged his supporters from voting by mail. Within each sector, the votes are not independent and the base rates differ from sector to sector. Since the results from each precinct are announced as they become available and the mail-in ballots are counted later still, then as the different tranches are added up, the running tally favoring each candidate can rise or fall, and the final result cannot be extrapolated from the interim ones. The flapdoodle was raised to the 4th power when Paxton multiplied the bogus probabilities from the 4 states, whose votes are not independent either. Whatever sways voters in the Great Lakes state is also likely to sway them in America's Disneyland. Statistical independence is tied to the concept of, this is a new subsection. There are a few paragraph breaks here. Okay. Statistical independence is tied to the concept of causation. If one event affects another, they are not statistically independent. Though, as we shall see, the converse isn't true. Events that are causally isolated may be statistically dependent. Statistical independence is